Not everything built to last was born complete. Some monuments carry hesitation in their shape, a decision altered midway, a moment of doubt preserved in stone. What appears at first as imperfection can, with time, become evidence of learning rather than failure. In this video, we explore a structure that does not hide its uncertainty, but reveals it openly, as if history itself paused to reconsider. If you enjoy uncovering the human story behind humanity's greatest achievements, consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel. Now, let's begin. At the edge of Egypt's desert plateau at Dashur, the bent pyramid rises in a silence that feels almost contemplative. Its pale limestone surfaces catch the sunlight not with triumph, but with restraint, as though the monument itself hesitated, and in that hesitation preserved the outline of a civilization still negotiating its understanding of permanence. It stands as the product of a world that expected stability, continuity, and mastery over stone, constructed under the reign of a king who believed his name would pass seamlessly from mortal life into eternity. The fascination of the bent pyramid does not lie in its size, but in its exposed uncertainty. Unlike the smooth, assured geometry that later pyramids would present as symbols of absolute control, this monument shifts its angle midway through construction. Rising steeply at first, it then abruptly relaxes into a gentler slope, a decision locked forever into its silhouette. This visible adjustment announces that something did not unfold as intended, that one of the most ambitious architectural undertakings of the ancient world encountered limits it could not ignore. Built during the reign of Pharaoh Sneferu of the 4th dynasty around 2600 BCE, the bent pyramid represents not an endpoint but a process. It captures a transitional moment when Egypt was still learning how to translate royal ideology into stone that could endure forever. Sneferu's reign was marked by unprecedented architectural ambition. He commissioned multiple pyramids, pouring immense resources into experimentation with form, technique, and symbolic meaning. Among these projects, the bent pyramid is the most revealing precisely because it exposes the trial and error behind what later generations would mistake for effortless perfection. Its lower courses rise at an angle of approximately 54 degrees, dangerously steep for a structure of such mass. Higher up, the angle shifts to about 43 degrees, reducing pressure and stabilizing the weight above. This change required recalculating loads, altering casing techniques, and reorganizing labor while construction was already well underway, an extraordinary act of adaptation performed at monumental scale. Internally, the pyramid is no less unconventional. It contains two separate entrance systems and a complex arrangement of chambers with corbelled ceilings, reflecting ongoing experimentation with pressure distribution and burial design. Rather than following a single established blueprint, the builders appear to have been probing the limits of what stone could be made to do, adjusting their approach as new structural challenges emerged. Unlike earlier step pyramids, the bent pyramid was intended from the beginning to be a true smooth-sided pyramid, clad in fine white limestone. Remarkably, much of this casing still survives, offering a rare glimpse of how these monuments originally appeared, not as weathered ruins, but as radiant forms reflecting sunlight across the desert, material expressions of cosmic order and royal eternity. The scale of labor involved was immense. Tens of thousands of workers were mobilized through carefully coordinated systems aligned with the Nile's seasonal cycles. Quarrying, transport, precise alignment, and construction unfolded within a society that believed the king's successful transformation into an eternal being was essential to maintaining the balance of the universe itself. Royal burial was not merely symbolic. It was cosmic necessity. And yet, despite this ideological certainty, the pyramid's altered profile reveals anxiety beneath the surface. Structural cracks in the core masonry, Instability in the casing and evidence of foundation subsidence suggest that the original design became untenable. Rather than risking catastrophic collapse, the builders chose compromise over failure, adapting the form instead of abandoning the project altogether. Here, a contradiction becomes impossible to ignore. Ancient Egypt is often portrayed as a civilization of absolute authority and divine confidence. Yet the bent pyramid records hesitation, revision, and pragmatic decision-making. It reveals that even under divine kingship, knowledge advanced through miscalculation and correction as much as through certainty. Many Egyptologists argue that lessons learned from the nearby Meidum Pyramid, another Sneferu project that partially collapsed, prompted engineers to prioritize structural stability over symbolic steepness. Others suggest time pressure, possibly related to Sneferu's advancing age, forced a decision to complete the monument efficiently rather than flawlessly. Still others point to geological factors at Dashur, including softer subsoil than that found at Giza, which may have imposed constraints invisible at the planning stage. What complicates interpretation is that Sneferu did not abandon pyramid construction after the bent pyramid. Instead, he commissioned the nearby Red Pyramid, which adopted the shallower angle from the outset and stands as Egypt's first fully successful true pyramid. This sequence strongly implies that the bent pyramid was not a failure, but a necessary experiment, a full-scale prototype constructed in stone. This realization raises unsettling questions. To modern sensibilities, the idea of experimenting with entire mountains of limestone appears irrational. Yet within the logic of ancient Egypt, refinement itself may have been an expression of royal power. The ability to absorb mistakes without consequence demonstrated authority as clearly as perfection did. Speculation extends beyond engineering into symbolism. Some scholars suggest the dual angle may reflect cosmological concepts, the horizon or the primeval mound emerging from chaos. More unconventional interpretations propose that the pyramid was never intended to conform to a single ideal form, serving instead as a ritual structure marking transition rather than completion. Others see it as the product of political negotiation, balancing priestly expectations, labor realities, and royal ambition into a compromised but acceptable whole. None of these explanations fully resolves the unease the bent pyramid provokes. It remains unique, an anomaly preserved rather than corrected. Its survival suggests it fulfilled enough of its purpose to be accepted as complete, despite visibly deviating from the ideal it helped define. Standing before it today, one does not encounter the myth of ancient infallibility, but evidence of learning in motion, a civilization reaching towards permanence without certainty of success. The bent pyramid occupies a rare place in human history, where the adjustment became the final form, where the scaffolding of knowledge was never removed, and where a culture devoted to eternal order inadvertently left behind a monument to doubt. It still stands, its silhouette bending under the weight of ambition, reminding us that even the most confident civilizations shape their futures through moments of uncertainty, moments that even stone cannot fully conceal. Hidden along the arid cliffs of the Gobi Desert in northwest China lies the extraordinary complex of the Dunhuang Mogao Caves, also known as the Caves of the Thousand Buddhas. Established during the 4th century CE, these caves represent one of the most significant cultural and religious landmarks along the ancient Silk Road. Serving as both a spiritual retreat and a hub of artistic expression, the Mogao Caves were carved into the cliffs overlooking the Dang River, offering protection from harsh desert winds while creating an awe-inspiring sanctuary for Buddhist monks and travelers. The origins of the caves are deeply intertwined with the spread of Buddhism from India into Central Asia and China. As trade along the Silk Road flourished, merchants, pilgrims, and monks traveled vast distances, exchanging not only goods but also ideas, texts, and artistic styles. The caves became a repository for these cultural exchanges, with murals, statues, and manuscripts reflecting influences from Indian, Persian, and even Greco-Roman art. Initially, the caves served religious purposes, with early monks seeking meditation and spiritual enlightenment in the solitude of the desert cliffs. Over time, wealthy patrons and local officials sponsored the creation of elaborate murals and sculptures, demonstrating both piety and prestige. Each cave is unique, with intricate carvings and vivid frescoes depicting Buddhist sutras, divine figures, and scenes from daily life along the Silk Road. The historical significance of the Mogao caves extends beyond their religious function. They are a living record of centuries of cross-cultural interaction, illustrating how art and spirituality could flourish amidst the dynamic and often perilous environment of the Silk Road. From modest beginnings, the caves would eventually grow into a sprawling network of over 700 chambers, each telling its own story of devotion, commerce, and artistic achievement. By the Tang dynasty, 618 to 907 CE, the Mogao caves had reached the height of their artistic and architectural splendor. The caves were meticulously carved into the cliffs, with interiors designed to accommodate both religious ceremonies and the display of elaborate murals. Frescoes, painted with mineral-based pigments, cover the walls and ceilings, depicting Buddhist cosmology, the lives of the Buddha, bodhisattvas, and scenes of paradise along the Silk Road. The sophistication and scale of the artwork make the Mogao caves a veritable museum of ancient Chinese Buddhist art. Sculptural works complement the murals, ranging from small votive figures to towering statues exceeding 10 meters in height. The statues often feature intricate drapery, serene facial expressions, and elaborate jewelry, reflecting influences from India and Central Asia. Each element is designed with precision, creating a harmonious fusion of spirituality and aesthetics that resonates through the centuries. The Mogao caves also functioned as centers of manuscript preservation. Hidden chambers, such as the famed Library Cave, Cave 17, contained tens of thousands of documents, including Buddhist sutras, administrative records, and secular literature. These manuscripts, dating from the 4th to the 11th centuries, offer unparalleled insight into the social, economic, and religious life of Danwang. They reveal the multicultural nature of the region, with texts written in Chinese, Tibetan, Sanskrit, Sogdian, and other languages, underscoring the city's role as a nexus of ideas and commerce. Beyond their visual beauty, the caves illustrate the evolution of artistic techniques over centuries. Early murals emphasize simplicity and devotional purpose, while later works during the Tang and Song dynasties showcase intricate detail, vibrant color palettes, and narrative complexity. The Mogao caves stand as a testament to human creativity, spiritual devotion, and the enduring power of cultural exchange. Despite centuries of flourishing, the Mogao caves faced periods of decline due to political instability, natural disasters, and shifts in trade routes. By the late Yuan and early Ming dynasties, many caves were abandoned or fell into disrepair. Sandstorms and erosion gradually damaged murals and sculptures, while human activity, including looting, contributed to further deterioration. The modern rediscovery of the Mogao caves began in the early 20th century, largely due to Western explorers and archaeologists, such as R.L. Stein and Paul Pelliot. In 1900, a hidden chamber known as the Library Cave was found sealed for centuries, revealing an extraordinary treasure trove of manuscripts, paintings, and historical documents. The discovery captured the imagination of scholars worldwide, highlighting Dunhuang's pivotal role in the history of art, religion, and international trade. Efforts to preserve the Mogao caves began soon after, with both Chinese authorities and international organizations seeking to protect the delicate murals and sculptures from environmental damage and human interference. Advances in conservation techniques, including climate control, digital documentation, and careful restoration, have helped safeguard the caves for future generations. The site now serves not only as a historical monument, but also as a research hub for scholars studying the Silk Road, Buddhism, and cross-cultural artistic influences. The cave's preservation highlights the fragility of cultural heritage and the importance of protecting historical sites. Each mural and manuscript is a window into the past, offering insights into religious devotion, artistic innovation, and the complex interplay of cultures along one of the world's most famous trade routes. Today, the Dunhuang Mogao Caves are celebrated as a UNESCO World Heritage Site, recognized for their exceptional cultural, historical, and artistic value. Tourists, scholars, and pilgrims alike are drawn to the site, marveling at the intricate murals, statues, and manuscripts that have survived over a millennium. The caves offer a rare glimpse into the spiritual and artistic life of the Silk Road, illustrating how art, religion, and commerce intersected in a vibrant and multicultural environment. Mogao's legacy extends far beyond its physical beauty. The caves exemplify the spread and adaptation of Buddhism, revealing how religious traditions were localized and blended with regional artistic styles. The manuscripts preserved in the caves provide invaluable historical data, informing modern understanding of politics, society, and daily life in medieval China and Central Asia. Moreover, the Mogao Caves inspire contemporary artists and scholars who study the techniques, narratives, and iconography of the murals to understand cross-cultural influence and artistic innovation. Digital preservation projects, virtual tours, and high-resolution imaging now make it possible for people worldwide to experience the caves without physically visiting, ensuring that Dunhuang's treasures continue to educate and inspire. Ultimately, the Dunhuang Mogao Caves stand as a testament to the enduring human spirit, creativity, and devotion. From their origin as humble meditation spaces to their transformation into a global symbol of art, culture, and spirituality, the caves remain a timeless monument to the Silk Road's rich history, a place where history, religion, and art converge in breathtaking harmony. Perched dramatically on the cliffs of Tianshui in Gansu Province, China, the Maijishan grottoes are a remarkable testament to the fusion of art, religion, and human perseverance. Carved into the reddish sandstone cliffs that rise nearly 200 meters above the Maiji Mountain, these grottoes are an intricate network of over 190 caves containing more than 7,000 Buddhist sculptures and 1,000 square meters of murals. Their creation began during the later Qin dynasty, around the late 4th century CE, a period marked by the spread of Buddhism throughout China via the Silk Road. The grottoes were more than mere religious monuments. They were centers of devotion, education, and artistic innovation. Monks, artisans, and patrons collaborated over centuries to carve sanctuaries, statues, and murals that reflected both spiritual devotion and technical ingenuity. The location of Maijishan was strategic. It sat along important Silk Road routes, connecting central China to western regions, allowing the flow of religious ideas, artistic styles, and trade goods. Early grottoes were modest and focused on meditation spaces and simple Buddha statues, reflecting the devotional practices of early Chinese Buddhism. As dynasties changed and imperial patronage increased, the grottoes evolved into elaborate chambers with intricate reliefs and colossal figures. The interplay of natural rock formations and man-made artistry gave the grottoes a unique aesthetic, where the cliffs themselves became an integral part of spiritual and artistic expression. The historical context of Maijishan is inseparable from the wider narrative of Buddhist art in China. Influences from India, Central Asia, and even Hellenistic traditions can be traced in the sculptures and murals, illustrating the cosmopolitan nature of the Silk Road. Each cave captures a distinct moment in this evolving artistic and religious landscape, making Maijishan not only a spiritual sanctuary, but also a living chronicle of cultural exchange. The Maijishan grottoes are renowned for their extraordinary artistic achievements, blending sculpture, mural painting, and cliffside engineering in ways that are both visually stunning and spiritually resonant. Over centuries, artisans carved intricate niches into the cliffs, installing Buddha statues that range from small figurines to colossal figures over 15 meters tall. These sculptures depict the Buddha, bodhisattvas, heavenly beings, and scenes from Buddhist sutras, each crafted with remarkable attention to detail and expressive subtlety. Murals covering the grotto walls further enhance the artistic legacy. Painted with mineral pigments that have remarkably survived the centuries, they illustrate Buddhist narratives, the lives of monks, and the spiritual journeys of devotees. Over time, styles evolved to reflect the aesthetics of successive dynasties, from the angular, simple forms of the Northern Wei to the dynamic and fluid lines of the Tang dynasty. The fusion of realism, stylization, and spiritual symbolism gives the grottos a unique identity distinct from other Chinese Buddhist sites. Architecturally, Maijishan demonstrates ingenuity and adaptability. Wooden walkways, platforms, and staircases connect the caves across the sheer cliff face, allowing visitors and monks to access sanctuaries hundreds of meters above the valley floor. The integration of human-made structures with the natural rock formations reflects an understanding of both engineering and aesthetics, where functionality complements spiritual purpose. Despite their enduring beauty, the Maijishan grottos have faced numerous challenges over the centuries. Natural erosion, earthquakes, and exposure to the elements have threatened both the cliffs and the delicate artworks within. Human activity, including the theft of sculptures and damage from unregulated tourism, further endangered the integrity of the site. Modern preservation efforts began in the 20th century, with Chinese authorities and international conservation teams collaborating to stabilize the cliffs, restore murals, and protect the sculptures. Techniques include climate-controlled shelters for particularly vulnerable caves, structural reinforcements for wooden platforms, and meticulous cleaning and restoration of pigments. Digital documentation and 3D scanning have also become critical tools, ensuring that Maijishan's artistic and historical record can be studied and appreciated even if physical access becomes restricted. Rediscovery and scholarly interest have illuminated the broader significance of Maijishan. Researchers have identified influences from Indian, Central Asian, and even Greco-Bactrian artistic traditions, highlighting the site's role as a melting pot along the Silk Road. The grottos also provide invaluable data on the development of Buddhist iconography, monastic organization, and regional politics across multiple dynasties. Each cave, mural, and inscription contributes to a growing understanding of how Buddhism shaped and was shaped by Chinese society over more than a millennium. The challenges faced by Maijishan underscore the fragility of cultural heritage. Balancing preservation, tourism, and scholarship requires constant vigilance, but these efforts have ensured that the grottos continue to inspire awe and scholarship, offering a window into a civilization where religion, art, and engineering merged seamlessly. Today, the Maijishan grottos are recognized as one of China's most important cultural and historical treasures, celebrated for their artistic, spiritual, and historical significance. A UNESCO World Heritage Site, the grottos attract visitors, pilgrims, and scholars from around the world, eager to experience the synthesis of art, devotion, and ingenuity carved into the cliffs. The grottos' legacy extends far beyond their physical presence. They illustrate the spread and localization of Buddhism in China, showing how foreign religious ideas were adapted to local tastes and cultural norms. Artistic innovations developed at Maijishan influenced other Buddhist sites across China, including the famous Yungang and Longmen grottos. The site also exemplifies the historical importance of the Silk Road, where trade routes facilitated not only the movement of goods, but also the transmission of culture, religion, and technology. In addition to their historical and spiritual significance, the grottos continue to inspire contemporary artists, historians, and architects. The integration of natural rock, sculptural form, and painted narrative provides a model of artistic harmony that resonates in modern creative fields. Digital preservation initiatives, including virtual tours and high-resolution imaging, now allow people worldwide to explore the grottos, ensuring that Maijishan's treasures endure for generations to come. Ultimately, the Maijishan grottos stand as a testament to human devotion, creativity, and resilience. Over centuries, monks, artisans, and patrons transformed cliffs into a spiritual and artistic marvel. Today, the grottos offer a profound reminder of the power of faith, the richness of cross-cultural exchange, and the timeless beauty of art carved in stone. The Great Pyramid of Cholula does not announce itself with sharp geometry or defiant height. It does not cut into the sky the way stone pyramids do. Instead, it spreads outward, low and immense, an earthen body softened by centuries of rain, grass, and human forgetting. So completely has it merged with its surroundings that for generations it was mistaken for a natural hill rather than a deliberate act of architecture. Yet at the moment of its creation, this place was anything but quiet or incidental. It was animated by movement, ritual, and belief. Thousands of hands shaped it over centuries. Those who built it believed their city would persist, that their gods would be honored without interruption, and that the future would understand what they had raised. The irony is that what they made endured, but its meaning slipped from view. The mystery of Cholula begins not with spectacle, but with disappearance. Unlike the pyramids of Egypt, whose visibility defines their legacy, this structure vanished in plain sight. Known today as the Great Pyramid of Cholula, it expanded gradually into the largest pyramid ever constructed by volume, while leaving behind no single inscription, no definitive founding moment, and no clear point of completion. Instead, it accumulated intention upon intention, layer after layer, until even the descendants of its builders no longer recognized its true scale or form. What remains is a vast stepped mass of adobe brick covering more than 40 acres, rising through at least 6 major construction phases beginning as early as the 3rd century BCE. Each phase enveloped the previous one rather than demolishing it. The past was not erased here. It was sealed inside, preserved through ritual accumulation. Modern archaeological tunnels cut through these layers, revealing nested pyramids frozen in time, each reflecting a slightly altered worldview. Every expansion required extraordinary coordination, control of resources, sustained social stability, and collective memory transmitted across generations. All of this was achieved without metal tools, wheeled transport, or draft animals, relying instead on human labor, inherited technique, and shared belief. Cholula itself was among the longest continuously inhabited cities in Mesoamerica, a religious center whose influence extended far beyond its political authority. The pyramid did not function as a tomb. It was an axis, a constructed sacred mountain, echoing older mythic landscapes where deities were believed to reside. Rather than striving upward, it anchored the heavens through mass, repetition, and continuity, binding the cosmic to the human through endurance rather than elevation. And yet, despite its scale, the pyramid defies modern expectations of monumentality. Unlike projects designed to reach a final, perfected form, Cholula's pyramid was never truly finished. It was endlessly added to, as if its meaning resided not in completion, but in renewal. Generation after generation contributed to a structure no single participant could ever see in its entirety. The contradiction deepens when this immense effort is placed against its historical erasure. When the Spanish arrived in the 16th century, they described Cholula as a city dense with temples, yet they failed to recognize the massive pyramid beneath their feet. A Christian church, the Iglesia de Nuestra Señora de los Remedios, was constructed atop its summit, unknowingly crowning the largest man-made structure on Earth. This misrecognition persisted for centuries, reinforced by vegetation, erosion, and a cultural assumption that true monumentality must announce itself in stone rather than earth. The case of Cholula unsettles archaeology, because if a project of such magnitude could disappear simply by blending into its environment, then visibility itself becomes an unreliable measure of importance. The pyramid's invisibility does not signal simplicity or decline, but a fundamentally different relationship to permanence. Meaning here was embedded in process, in ritual continuity, not in producing an unmistakable silhouette for distant observers. Even today, despite extensive excavation, there's no consensus on why construction resumed after long intervals, why it eventually ceased, or how authority was sustained across centuries without a centralized empire comparable to the Aztecs or Maya at their height. Some scholars suggest Cholula functioned as a pilgrimage center where diverse cultures contributed labor and materials as acts of devotion rather than state obligation. Others interpret the pyramid as a political stabilizer, a shared sacred project that absorbed social tension by channeling collective energy into construction. More speculative theories propose that the layered expansions encoded astronomical cycles or calendrical renewals, with each phase marking recovery after catastrophe, famine, or upheaval. In this view, architecture became a physical memory of survival. There are even arguments that the pyramid's gradual burial was intentional, that allowing it to become a hill was itself a ritual act, returning human labor to the earth as a form of completion rather than abandonment. What complicates every interpretation is the absence of a clear collapse. Cholula did not vanish suddenly. It thinned, adapted, and endured. The pyramid's scale suggests confidence in continuity, yet its final form reflects acceptance of impermanence, as if its builders understood that even the most monumental works would eventually be misunderstood, repurposed, or forgotten. Standing today beneath the church that crowns it, the pyramid confronts us with the limits of historical reconstruction. Tunnels can expose walls and murals, but not intention. Measurements can calculate volume, but not belief. The Great Pyramid of Cholula is not a testament to lost technology or mystical power, but to a human willingness to build for futures that would never recognize the builders as they imagined themselves. It endured conquest, conversion, and neglect without resistance, waiting centuries to be rediscovered, not as a triumph of engineering alone, but as a reminder that history does not always survive by standing apart from nature. Sometimes it survives by becoming indistinguishable from it. On a quiet limestone ridge in southeastern Anatolia, far from the great rivers where civilization was supposed to begin, lies a place that should not exist. Göbekli Tepe, meaning pot-belly hill in Turkish, appears unremarkable at first glance. There are no towering ruins, no walls, no signs of cities or homes. And yet, buried beneath this artificial mound is one of the most profound archaeological discoveries ever made. Göbekli Tepe dates to around 9600 BCE, more than 11,500 years ago. This places it deep in the pre-pottery Neolithic period, thousands of years before Stonehenge, before the pyramids, and before agriculture was thought to exist. At this time, according to long-held assumptions, humans were nomadic hunter-gatherers, living in small groups with limited social organization. Göbekli Tepe challenges every part of that narrative. The site was first noted in the 1960s, but dismissed as a medieval cemetery. It was not until the 1990s that German archaeologist Klaus Schmidt recognized its true significance. What he uncovered was staggering. Massive T-shaped stone pillars, some weighing over 15 tons, arranged in circular enclosures. These stones were carved with reliefs of animals, foxes, snakes, boars, vultures, and insects, rendered with precision and intent. There is no evidence of domestic life here, no hearths, no houses, no trash pits. Göbekli Tepe was not a settlement, it was something else entirely. A place built not to live in, but to gather, to ritualize, and perhaps to believe. The most unsettling question Göbekli Tepe raises is simple. Who built it? At the time of its construction, humans had not yet developed pottery, metal tools, wheeled transport, or domesticated animals. The builders of Göbekli Tepe were hunter-gatherers using stone tools, and yet they quarried, transported, carved, and erected some of the largest stone monuments of the prehistoric world. Each circular enclosure consists of outer pillars facing inward, surrounding two larger central pillars. These central stones often bear carved arms and hands, suggesting they represent stylized human or supernatural beings. They are not abstract, they are intentional. This implies planning, coordination, leadership, and shared purpose on a scale previously thought impossible for non-agricultural societies. To construct Göbekli Tepe, hundreds of people may have been required, working over generations. This forces a radical rethinking of human development. Rather than agriculture leading to organized religion and monumental architecture, Göbekli Tepe suggests the opposite. Shared belief may have come first. In this view, religion, or at least ritual, was not a byproduct of civilization. It was the engine that drove it. The need to gather for ceremonies may have encouraged seasonal settlement. Feeding large groups may have pushed experimentation with wild grains. Over time, this pressure could have led to the domestication of plants and animals. Göbekli Tepe does not sit at the end of the hunter-gatherer era. It may sit at the beginning of civilization itself.
Göbekli Tepe is not only impressive in scale, it is deeply symbolic. The animal carvings are not decorative. Predatory creatures dominate the imagery. Lions, snakes, scorpions, animals associated with danger and power. Human figures are rare, fragmented, or headless. This imbalance suggests a worldview shaped by fear, reverence, and the unseen forces of nature. Some enclosures include reliefs interpreted as decapitated heads or vultures carrying human remains. This echoes later Neolithic practices of skull cults and sky burials, where bodies were exposed to birds as part of funerary rituals. Göbekli Tepe may have been a place where the living interacted with the dead or with spirits believed to inhabit the landscape. The T-shaped pillars themselves may represent ancestral beings, gods, or guardians. Their faceless forms give them a timeless, inhuman presence. They stand not as portraits, but as symbols. There is also evidence that Göbekli Tepe was deliberately buried. After centuries of use, its enclosures were carefully filled with debris, animal bones, and stone fragments. This was not destruction, it was closure. The act of burying the site suggests ritual decommissioning, a conscious end to its sacred function. New enclosures were then built nearby, repeating the cycle. This implies continuity of belief across generations, guided by tradition rather than chance. Göbekli Tepe was not random. It was remembered, maintained, and eventually sealed, like a message buried for the future. Around 8000 BCE, Göbekli Tepe was abandoned entirely. By then, the world was changing. Agriculture was emerging across the Fertile Crescent. Permanent villages were forming. New social structures replaced older ritual-centered gatherings. Göbekli Tepe belonged to an earlier mindset, a world where belief came before cities and meaning before permanence. Only a small portion of the site has been excavated. Geophysical surveys suggest dozens of additional enclosures remain buried beneath the hill. What we know may be only a fragment of a much larger sacred landscape. Its discovery has forced archaeologists to reconsider the origins of religion, social complexity, and civilization itself. Göbekli Tepe does not fit neatly into existing timelines. It breaks them. It reminds us that human history is not a straight line of progress, but a series of experiments, some remembered, others forgotten. Today, Göbekli Tepe stands as a silent challenge to modern assumptions. It tells us that long before writing, before farming, before cities, humans were already capable of abstract thought, collective effort, and profound symbolic expression. Civilization did not begin with bricks and fields. It began with stories, rituals, and the shared need to understand a mysterious world.
Hatra lies on the dry plains of northern Mesopotamia, a landscape where wind smooths the ground so completely that human presence seems temporary by design. Within this open terrain, the city's ruins form a vast and nearly perfect circle, neither accidental nor eroded into shape, but clearly intentional, as if the settlement had once been traced onto the earth with a single deliberate gesture. This geometry enclosed a complete and functioning world, one that assumed stability, protection, and divine favor. Its builders acted with the confidence of people who believed their walls would endure, that the sun would rise over their city endlessly, and that the gods who guarded them would continue to listen. The fascination of Hatra does not arise from what it was alone, but from how completely it disrupts expectation. The city known today as Hatra resists placement within the dominant imperial narratives of antiquity. It belongs fully neither to Rome nor to Parthia, and it left behind no continuous historical account explaining how it emerged so rapidly, fortified itself so thoroughly, and then disappeared with striking finality, leaving monumental stone but remarkably little memory. Between the 1st and 3rd centuries CE, Hatra flourished as a wealthy caravan city, positioned along key trade routes connecting the Mediterranean world with Mesopotamia, Persia, and regions farther east. Its prosperity was not recorded primarily in fragile manuscripts, but inscribed into its physical form. Defensive walls stretched more than 6 kilometers in circumference and were reinforced by over 160 towers, creating a layered system of protection that balanced deterrence with endurance. Inside these defenses rose temples built from carefully cut limestone blocks, assembled without mortar, yet locked together with a sophisticated understanding of weight distribution and structural stress, evidence of accumulated engineering knowledge rather than improvised skill. At the center of the city stood an immense sacred precinct devoted primarily to Shamash, the Mesopotamian sun god. Here, monumental iwans, vaulted halls open on one side, rose with a scale and assurance that anticipates architectural forms more commonly associated with much later Islamic traditions. Their size and precision imply not only technical mastery, but a shared civic agreement that religious architecture warranted the greatest concentration of labor, resources, and expertise. Carved inscriptions throughout the site appear in multiple languages, including Aramaic, Greek, and Parthian, revealing a population fluent in cultural overlap and political flexibility. Hatra's inhabitants navigated competing identities while maintaining a distinct local authority. Even the city's circular plan appears to carry symbolic meaning beyond defense, reflecting cosmological models in which sacred order radiated outward from a divine center, transforming urban space into a physical expression of belief. Despite this sophistication, Hatra defies easy classification. It was neither a minor provincial settlement nor the capital of an empire. Instead, its political structure seems to have balanced royal authority, priestly power, and mercantile wealth in a way that preserved independence without complete isolation.
This balance is most clearly demonstrated by Hatra's extraordinary military record. The city successfully resisted multiple Roman sieges, including campaigns associated with Emperor Trajan and later Septimius Severus, a near unprecedented achievement for a desert city facing the most formidable military force of the ancient Mediterranean world.
Such resistance implies not only strong fortifications, but advanced logistical coordination, strategic planning, and collective morale that far exceed what Hatra's limited textual record would suggest. Yet this resilience stands in stark contrast to the city's eventual fate. Despite surviving Rome, Hatra fell in the mid-3rd century CE to the Sasanian Persians and was soon afterward abandoned, not slowly diminished, but effectively erased as a living city. Its population was dispersed or destroyed, its temples left exposed to sun and wind, and its name reduced to brief and fragmented references in later sources. Archaeology offers no definitive explanation for why Hatra was never rebuilt, why its sacred center lost relevance so completely, or why its strategically valuable location was not reclaimed by successor powers, especially when nearby cities continued to prosper. This absence challenges conventional explanations, since military defeat alone rarely eliminates a city so thoroughly. The scale of abandonment suggests a deeper rupture, possibly religious, political, or cosmological, that rendered the site unusable or even forbidden. Some scholars argue that Hatra's identity was inseparable from its status as a divinely protected sacred city. Once that protection was perceived to have failed, its symbolic legitimacy collapsed. Reconstruction may have seemed impossible to survivors who interpreted the city's fall not as chance, but as cosmic judgment. Others point to shifting trade routes and imperial consolidation that marginalized independent hubs like Hatra, turning autonomy from an advantage into a liability. More speculative interpretations suggest internal fractures between priestly authority and kingship, or between local tradition and external influence, that weakened the cohesion that once enabled resistance. Additional theories propose environmental stress, failures in water management, or deliberate destruction of infrastructure that made resettlement impractical. Evidence remains fragmentary, reinforcing the sense that Hatra's disappearance resulted not from a single cause, but from a convergence of pressures that modern analysis struggles to fully reconstruct. Perhaps most unsettling is the speed with which Hatra passed from lived reality into legend. In later folklore, it became associated with curses and divine retribution, as though memory itself resisted preservation. For centuries, its ruins stood largely unexamined, known yet unexplained, until modern archaeology began to recover fragments of its story from beneath layers of silence. Even today, after extensive study, Hatra feels unfinished as a historical narrative. Its architecture implies long-term planning. Its defenses suggest confidence in survival. Its temples radiate assurance rather than anxiety. All point toward a future that never arrived. The deliberate destruction inflicted on parts of the site in recent decades adds a final layer of loss, echoing the ancient erasure in modern form and reinforcing Hatra's role as a symbol of how swiftly human achievement can unravel when meaning collapses. In the end, Hatra stands as a reminder that civilizations are sustained not only by stone and strategy, but by shared belief in continuity. When that belief fractures through conquest, theological rupture, or historical forgetting, even the strongest walls provide no protection. The circular city of the sun god remains open to the sky, its geometry intact, its story unresolved, inviting reflection not on how it was built, but on how entire worlds can disappear once the assumptions that sustained them quietly dissolve.
High in the rugged mountains of southeastern Anatolia, where winter snow lingers long into spring and the horizon seems endless, rises Mount Nemrut. At an elevation of over 2,100 meters, this isolated peak was never meant to be ordinary. It was chosen deliberately to impress, to intimidate, and to endure.
Unlike most ancient monuments, Mount Nemrut was not built for the living. It was built for eternity. At its summit stands a massive artificial mound of crushed limestone, rising like a pyramid of stone. Surrounding it are terraces lined with colossal seated statues, gods, animals, and a king who dared to place himself among them. Their heads, now toppled and scattered, stare outward with hollow, weathered eyes. This is not a natural sanctuary shaped by centuries of worship. It is a carefully designed statement of power, belief, and legacy. And behind it stands a single figure, King Antiochus I of Commagene. Antiochus ruled a small but strategically vital kingdom in the 1st century BCE, positioned between the Roman and Parthian empires. Commagene was a cultural crossroads, and Antiochus saw himself not merely as a ruler, but as a bridge between worlds, bloodlines, and gods. Mount Nemrut was his masterpiece, a mountain transformed into a divine throne. King Antiochus I was not content with being remembered as a mortal king. He claimed divine ancestry, tracing his lineage to both Persian kings and Alexander the Great. Through this carefully crafted genealogy, he positioned himself as the embodiment of East and West. This ideology is carved directly into Mount Nemrut. The statues that once sat intact depict a unique fusion of deities: Zeus combined with the Persian god Ahura Mazda, Apollo merged with Mithras and Helios, and Hercules linked to the Iranian god Varathragna. These hybrid gods reflect Antiochus's vision of unity, a syncretic religion designed to legitimize his rule and elevate his status beyond death. At the center stands Antiochus himself, equal in size to the gods. This was not symbolic humility, it was a declaration: the king belongs among the divine. Inscribed on stone slabs surrounding the terraces is a long funerary inscription written in Greek. In it, Antiochus explains his divine mission, commands rituals in his honor, and threatens divine punishment upon anyone who neglects his cult. He carefully describes festivals, sacrifices, and priestly duties meant to ensure his eternal remembrance. The burial chamber itself remains undiscovered, believed to lie deep beneath the stone mound. Despite centuries of excavation attempts, no one has reached Antiochus's tomb. The mountain keeps its secret. What is clear, however, is the ambition. Mount Nemrut was not just a tomb, it was a cosmic stage where the king would sit forever, watching the sun rise and set, eternally honored by gods and men.
Antiochus's dream of immortality did not survive history. After his death, the kingdom of Commagene endured briefly, balancing precariously between Rome and Parthia. Eventually, Rome absorbed it entirely. The royal cult faded. Rituals ceased, priests disappeared. The gods on Mount Nemrut were left alone with the wind. Earthquakes likely toppled the colossal heads from their bodies. Harsh weather eroded facial features once carved with precision. Snow, ice, and time reduced divine certainty to stone fragments scattered across the terraces. Unlike temples in cities, Mount Nemrut had no population to protect it, no community to maintain its rituals. Its isolation, once its greatest strength, became the reason for its abandonment. For centuries, the mountain faded into legend. Local shepherds passed by the strange stones but did not know their origin. Classical writers mentioned Commagene only briefly. Antiochus's name nearly vanished from memory. It was not until the late 19th century that Mount Nemrut was rediscovered by modern scholars. What they found was both breathtaking and unsettling, a sacred site frozen between belief and decay, ambition and oblivion. The gods still faced the sky, but no one was watching them anymore. Mount Nemrut is not just an archaeological site, it is a psychological monument, a reflection of humanity's fear of death and desire for meaning. Antiochus believed that memory could defeat mortality, that by placing himself among the gods, carving his story into stone, and commanding eternal rituals, he could transcend time. In some ways, he succeeded. His mountain still stands. His name is spoken again. But the silence surrounding Nemrut tells another story. The rituals ended. The gods fell. The empire that inspired the monument vanished. What remains is not eternal worship, but unanswered questions. Was Antiochus sincere in his beliefs, or was Mount Nemrut a calculated act of propaganda? Did the people of Commagene truly embrace his divine claims, or did they merely comply? Today, visitors climb the mountain before dawn to watch the sun rise between the broken heads of gods and kings. In that moment, a monument fulfills its original purpose, not as a cult center, but as an experience of awe. Mount Nemrut is not just an archaeological site, it is a psychological monument, a reflection of humanity's fear of death and desire for meaning. Antiochus believed that memory could defeat mortality, that by placing himself among the gods, carving his story into stone, and commanding eternal rituals, he could transcend time. In some ways, he succeeded. His mountain still stands. His name is spoken again. But the silence surrounding Nemrut tells another story. The rituals ended. The gods fell. The empire that inspired the monument vanished. What remains is not eternal worship, but unanswered questions. Was Antiochus sincere in his beliefs, or was Mount Nemrut a calculated act of propaganda? Did the people of Commagene truly embrace his divine claims, or did they merely comply? Today, visitors climb the mountain before dawn to watch the sun rise between the broken heads of gods and kings. In that moment, the monument fulfills its original purpose, not as a cult center, but as an experience of awe. Mount Nemrut reminds us that power seeks permanence, but time remains undefeated. Even the boldest attempts at immortality are reshaped by erosion, reinterpretation, and silence. Yet perhaps that is the true legacy of Nemrut, not a king who became a god, but a human who revealed in stone and scale how deeply we long to be remembered.